AireCon 2025, Daybreak and Tales from the Loop. This is Staying In.
Long time no see, gents.
We did it.
It's been a while.
Well done.
We did it.
We did it. How's everyone feeling? How's the last 48 hours
Yep.
been?
My feet have just touched the ground, Sam.
Monday was difficult.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Not going to lie. Monday was challenging.
Was it the come down?
Oh, it was lots of things. It was the come down. It was the pleasure, the good feeling, the good vibes, the reality of life hitting you full force in the face.
Yep.
Yep.
We had a lovely time at AireCon, didn't we?
Well, not to bury the lead, but me and Chris both said best AireCon ever.
Yep.
Wow.
Yep. And it was your first time, Dan, so maybe that's the reason why.
Well, that's what I like to think.
The four of us finally together, all of us, at AireCon.
Indeed.
They said it couldn't be done.
They said it couldn't be done. Well, with your history with travel, Pete, that's always up in the air.
Yeah.
And about 2 days before we were due to go, the reports were of Arctic winds hitting the UK. So.
I know.
Dan, as the last of the four of us, to enter that hallowed space, how did you find it overall?
I've heard you guys talk about it in the past, but it was not quite what I expected. Like, I'd been to Board Game Expo a number of years ago. We'd been to that, so I had some experience of that. And we on the first kind of day that I arrived quite late, so I was only there for the evening. And there was a little kind of fancy pants event that we were able to fortunately go to. We met some people, we had some nice drinks, and I just kind of got there, and it was in kind of the main room where the stalls are, and kind of the various board game companies are laying out their wares and showing people kind of how the games are played. Obviously, that wasn't going on that evening, but that was kind of where we were situated. And then Pete was kind of like, do you want me to show you? And you've not been here before. So I was like, brilliant. You guys were chatting around. Pete showed me around. And we had a little wander around, and it was lovely, and we got to see everything. And then we carried on having a drink or something. And then I kind of said to him, so do they move this stuff out of the way to get people to play games? Because I know you'd said in the past about, like, where's the bring and buy and all that stuff. And you're like, oh, you haven't seen all this. I was like, what? And I'd been there at this point for about 2 hours.
Yeah.
And then Pete kind of took me towards the back and then through a door into another room, which was 3 times the size and full of people that I had no idea were even in the building.
Yeah.
Like, we'd been in a really kind of small group of people. But there was this room full of tables of people just having fun and playing board games. And then Pete took me to a second room, which was even bigger and full of people playing board games and having fun. And then a third room. And like, this was very different to what I was expecting. So I was expecting it to be more of that first room of the, here's a game. Would you like to buy it? Here are the games that you can buy. Please buy our game. When actual fact, it was more of a place for just people who love games to come together and have a space to play. And that was lovely. And I think for me, that was my favourite takeaway of it, was seeing that environment, seeing kind of how wide and varied the demographic of the hobby is. And I think I mentioned that, I can't remember which one of you I mentioned that to, that like there is a perception of a certain demographic when it comes to board games, but there were all genders, all ages, families, friends, everyone was there. And it was really just a lovely experience to be a part of that and just see everyone having just a lovely time with it.
That is why AireCon ranks, amongst my favourite conventions, is the sense of community that it fosters and the fact that it allows that be the pervading force behind the whole convention. Like the rooms, you're right, Dan, in terms of the rooms where people can actually play games is 3 times the size of the room where people are selling and demoing and celebrating, for want of a better word, the commercial part of the board game industry. And no other game convention in the UK is really like that in that way. And so therefore it does attract a real cosmopolitan audience and a real diverse and inclusive audience who are all there really because they know that, yeah, we can go and pick up the latest copy of Dune Imperium Bloodlines. Thank you very much, ka-ching! And we can buy Slay the Spire and go and buy some lovely dice and see some RPG artwork and whatever else. But really, what we're here for is playing them games.
Oh, yeah.
And the amount of people, I think the accessory of this year that I saw more than ever were those little, like, fold-up carts that usually I see dads carrying at National Trust properties when they're going for a big picnic.
Or flower shows. I've seen them at a lot of flower shows.
Oh, yeah. Really handy at a flower show. Seeing just tons of those next to tables of people who are just like, here is where we're going to sit for the weekend. We are not moving. This is what we're going to get through.
Yeah, there was very much a sense of we met our good friend Richard Simpson from We're Not Wizards, who I've actually never met in person.
Me either.
None of us have.
No, me neither. No.
Oh wow! But I remember him him sitting there and saying like, "Yeah, lads, if you want to come and play, like we're camping down here. We're going to be here for that." And it's kind of like it was this proper element of like just a big board game club that were like, "Yeah, this is where we're going to be situated. Come and see us as you're passing by when you're between stuff. Just come and say hi and stuff like that." It was really that really relaxed element. There was no part of oh, there's a space over there, quick, get it. Like, there was never anything like that. There was always like, if I want to sit down and play a game, if I've got a game in my hand and I want to play it, we just go and find a spot, and there's tons of spaces everywhere, and it's full of people who, like, we had brought games with us because at the time you'd wanted to share some games with us that we hadn't played yet, like especially like me and Pete. There was that, and then it was people who'd got something from the bring and buy, and they were just so eager to play it immediately. They can literally walk out and sit down immediately and just pull it out and set it up and play it. Mm-hmm. And it's that just excitement that is just fostered through that entire event. It's lovely.
I think the other thing that made it a really good year is that I think for the first time in a long time, the hall itself, like the main hall where where the exhibitors were, really felt, to me anyway, it felt more established. It felt more cohesive and had a bit more of a nicer flow to it this year. Like, I think sometimes at a lot of conventions it can kind of feel like halls like that, like exhibitor halls, really feel like kind of what they are, which is not really sort of equal to the sum of their parts. Is kind of like, it is just lots of people who've paid a bit of money to put a hall here, and you put that thing next to the next thing, that thing next to the next thing, and you don't really think about it. Like, the great thing about what we experienced at Essen was that there is obviously so much care and attention that goes into, right, this hall is for this, and this exhibitor is going to be great next to this exhibitor, and this exhibitor is going to be great to this exhibitor, and this exhibitor is going to work really well in this hall next to this one. And I think in previous years of AireCon there's been some of that, but it hasn't really felt that cohesive as an experience. But this year it felt really established, and it was really nice to have like Hachette, Ravensburger, Asmodee, Kosmos, all really big established board game brands all around together. And then in amongst that you've got things like Cotswold Games were there with their game Tabletop Inc, and then other people there with games like Divide and Conker.
But what's also nice is that, like, there was never an element of competitiveness. It didn't feel like. It's like sometimes with kind of big conventions, it can be a little bit, come here, come and play that game. Come. No, don't go over there. Yeah. Come here. Like, especially I've seen that, like, when, like, in the past I've been to like video game conventions and stuff like that, and like various like Eurogame Expo in the past. You do get a bit more of that sense of, come play our cool thing, and there's people trying to usher you in. It's very much like people aren't going to be pulling at you unless you've actively shown an interest and you've come over to have a look at a game, and then they'll say, oh, brilliant, let's talk you through it. Let's have a little chat about our game, and would you like to have a go of it? Let's play this game about conkers. Like, all of that stuff is just like a really good way of not putting pressure on people and letting them just enjoy it and experience it at their own pleasure.
I think it's really important as well to highlight, like, again, like, those board game companies that we mentioned, they are big hitters, right? Chaosium was there. Like, they are arguably world's number 2, world's number 3 publisher of RPGs. Like that is not a small feat, right? and they were there. Like they had a proper presence. Like it was very Element Games was there, right? Like I'm a big fan of
it's
of their stuff. Big retailer. Traveling Man was there as well. Lots of big retailers were there, and it's really wonderful to see such a big show from some of the big hitters. But I think the important thing is it never felt like any of it really didn't gel together. Like definitely you could see the companies that had the most money because their displays were just ludicrous. Yeah, it never felt like I felt when I've been to things like Gamescom, for example, where it's just you can feel the money in a slightly icky way. It still all just felt a bit nice. It all just felt a bit like, hey, we're all just going to hang out in Harrogate and show these, have a relaxed time showing off some really cool stuff. I mean, I'm sure that a lot of the people who work those events are probably thinking, like, what the hell do these boys know? Like, it was really, really hard work. But it felt effortless. And I think that's the important bit, because for me as a consumer of this stuff, as a player, I want it to feel like, not like I'm going through a paid shop. I want it to feel like a community, and I think that AireCon absolutely delivers that every single time that I've been, and this year I think delivered it especially well.
Yeah, and picking up on the word you mentioned, Sam, to describe it, care. This was a curated space, and curate, its root origin is from care, essentially. And I really felt that through line there. There was this lovely section towards one of the far corners, essentially, where it was almost like Dice Alley. And it was like walking through a jewelry quarter.
Yeah.
Just seeing, okay, this is the dice corner. Brilliant. Awesome. And all the kind of accessories that kind of go with there. And it meant that each turn around the room, for whatever reason, felt much more labyrinthine and much more exciting. And Sam and I were talking about this. I really like the fact that each year I go to AireCon, I take less stuff. I trust in AireCon that something will appear.
Because AireCon will provide.
Yeah, because when you first go to a convention, you're thinking, okay, what if we're in a situation where we're not interested in anything, we're not able to get anything, and we've just got all this empty time we need filling?
Sure.
Each subsequent year I've gone to AireCon, I've just let the universe decide. And as we discovered last year, there's always an AireCon miracle. Definitely. And learning to kind of know that, I could turn up with nothing and find something, whether it be a really cool game that I've always wanted to play that I can try out from the library, or an incredible deal. Oh my gosh, I can't believe this is here. This is out of print and somebody's donated this to the Bring and Buy, or an independent publisher who's got a new game out and, I'll give this a try. I'll give it a punt. I might buy it and just play this straight away. AireCon always delivers.
Should we talk about some of the games?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, because you pointed out to us, Sam, that we played more games at this AireCon than we had in any other one we've attended.
Yes, I did. AireCon stats were strong this year. I think that was mainly bolstered by what I can only describe as a series of games of Strike from Ravensburger, which, I mean, unfortunately, Dan and Pete, you'd left by this point, so are yet to experience the
sleepy tired,
the absolute heroics from your boy Sam Turner in terms of Strike. But we played that game 6 times on the bounce.
Holy
it
cow.
was that good. That was one of the amazing highlights.
Okay, tell me about it, because I want to know. Obviously, Dan and I, we head off back to our bedrooms.
Oh yeah,
because we were exhausted old men.
Yeah.
So what is Strike?
I mean, I didn't really plan to speak about Strike, but here we are.
And yet, it was the first thing you mentioned.
Well, I was mentioned it only because it skewed the stats in some ways. That
Well, then
yes,
you got to
we did.
mention it.
Or can you begin by describing the feeling, Sam?
Oh, the feeling of Strike is like nothing really else in
It's a
board
sensation.
gaming terms. Like, it is ridiculous when, we met some lovely people there through our mutual friend Richard from the We're Not Wizards podcast, and he brought Strike, and I think I'd gone off to get a beer, and I came back and I was like, what is this ridiculous thing? Like, the box is quite big. It's got this indent in the middle with this like edged,
Yeah, it's like tiered, isn't it? Like
tiered
concave
sort of
tiered.
plastic inside with this felt bottom, and it's just like, and I came through halfway through the teach, and I heard words like and gladiatorial and gladiator and battle, and Strike is just a dexterity push your luck game where you have a sort of pool of dice. So everyone starts off with the same pool of dice, and all you've got to do is chuck a dice into this pot, and if you get 2 matches of 2 numbers, you get to take those dice out and put them back into your pool. However, if your dice lands on an X, that means that dice gets taken out of the pool. If your dice jumps out the box, if it doesn't land, or you don't get any matches, you're going to decide whether you're going to push your luck and try again, or let the next player have their go, and basically the last player standing wins. And there is a phrase in gaming called emergent narrative, and I guess that is the very, very sort of verbose way of sort of explaining that feeling of stories that grow out of things that you are doing. And after 6 rounds of playing Strike, I cannot tell you how much we were just absolutely invested in every single dice that we were throwing into this pot. Like, we must have been the most annoying people in that whole hall, because we were cheering, we were whooping, we were sort of bemoaning other people's like failures as they were throwing the dice. I developed a unbeatable Strike technique and won 3 games on the bounce, and it was just exactly the right game for exactly the right moment for exactly the right audience, and I just couldn't have been happier in that moment. So much so that I've spent the last 48 hours trying to track down a copy. me and Chris are now proud owners of our own versions of Strike. We bought a copy each. They're getting imported from Germany.
Oh my god. Oh my god.
And that's kind of how much that sort of the Strike has landed on us.
It's
and
struck.
Yeah, the Strike has struck. And that's it, isn't it? Like, that is the beautiful thing about AireCon. Like, Essen has its place and UKGE has its place, but to sit down at, I think it was like midnight, basically, on that Saturday night, and to have someone go, "Oh, do you want to play Strike?" And it just be like, "Yeah, whatever, yeah, just do it." And then to find something that magical and that entertaining. I mean, I know what will happen is me and Chris will get our copies and we'll play it and we'll be like, "Oh, where's the magic gone?"
I only just realised, Sam, because I perhaps misread our communications back and forth. I didn't realise I was getting my own copy. I thought we were sharing one.
No, you've got your own copy.
Wow.
I bought
the fact
2
that
copies.
I didn't bulk at the price.
No.
I just assumed, yeah, I'll just pay for that. Thank you. Even if it's...
You thought it was that much.
Oh,
You
yeah.
thought, oh, my word.
It's all about that velvet bottom.
I guess there are other things from the actual convention. So me and Chris got to play Gwent for the first time. So
Yes, from Hachette.
Hachette are publishing in the UK.
Gwent's based on the card game from Witcher, right?
Yes, Witch 3. So it is just a physical version of Gwent from the Witcher, and of which my board gaming group are very interested in, especially one of them who, like me, spent hundreds of hours playing The Witcher, and he's like, "How's Gwent? What's Gwent like?" And it was difficult not to describe it and not sound flippant, because it's kind of like, it's Gwent.
It's a known
Like,
quantity.
if you enjoyed playing Gwent in the video game The Witcher, you will love playing Gwent in real life in this physical version. And they were explaining to us while we were on the stand how, what we were playing was a prototype, like it's coming out later this year, and when it does, it's going to have a 5-player mode to it, which sounds absolutely ridiculous. And like, they're working really hard on making sure it's like a really like amazing tactile experience with some of the player pieces. And I mean, yeah, like it was great to kind of, I don't really know what I was expecting, because I was kind of like, it's Gwent, and Gwent is, Gwent is Gwent, and like it is the board game based off of the card game in a video game. And if you like that, you're absolutely going to go bonkers for Gwent because they've just done an amazing job of bringing it to life.
It looks really good, like the art style.
Yeah, I think they're going to make a mint out of different versions of that. Like I can see a collector's edition of that, or with a player mat and lots of like Witcher stuff in it, being highly sought after to make it feel like as genuine, as much of the genuine article as possible. There was a game also which pretty much sealed my ticket to the UK Games Expo this year. So I was sort of on the fence about going to the UK Games Expo this year, but we sauntered along to the Kosmos stand, and they showed us Australis.
Oh, lovely.
Okay.
And they were like, here is a game, here's a demo copy of it, but we're going to be releasing this at UK Games Expo. And I was like, I want to see more of this game. This looks brilliant, and it's a game very much in the same realms as Nun Attack from last year, Chris.
Yes, it is. Yes, it was the game that lured you all away from the massive game of Merchants Marauders I'd set up. Kosmos just reached out with their beckoning finger and said, "Oh no, do you want to play this? Do you want to play this new game?" And we all we actually left a game that was set up to play Nun Attack. That kind of nice family weight game where if you want to, you can lean into the strategy, but if not, you don't have to. And that's what I love about these kinds of games. And I think this feels, when it was explained to us, it feels very similar to that. Beautiful art style, lots of choices, point salad galore.
Yeah.
It's just going to keep giving you that kind of endorphin hit with each turn you play.
Yeah, absolutely. Like it looks amazing, and it is like, I didn't realize that it was kind of like a genre, but the reason why I really liked Nun Attack, and I think we're gonna come back to that as a game on a future podcast, and the reason why I really want to play Australis is because I've just got a thing about games that are just like, points, you want them? Here we go.
Yep.
Like, strap in. You're going to be getting points for just sitting there and having a drink. Here's a point.
The Peggle effect, right? Like that. Do everything that you can to make the player feel good because you're meant to feel good, like playing these games.
Yeah.
Yeah,
it's almost
absolutely.
as if we're still reeling from that game of Civilization.
Right.
Yeah. No. But that's it. Like, I think there is just something about games like that, and especially family games, where there are lots of games that are pitched to quote unquote families, but I don't think they ever really hit that rhythm actually means to a family, and when they play games and having that satisfaction ongoing, but also having that depth and complexity in it if you need it. And I think with these two games, it seems like Nun Attack and Australis, Kosmos have really managed to bridge that gap between like playing that instant gratification kind of game when you're sort of introducing players to stuff quite young, like the kind of games that I play with Hugo, to something that has that instant gratification with it, but also a bit of that depth and a bit of that ongoing strategy. So that was really great. Shall we talk Tales from the Loop?
Hell yeah.
Right, paintbrushes down, everyone.
Paintbrushes down, folks. Hold on.
Yes, because Pete, you are currently, as with the last episode, you are painting a miniature as you're recording
Painting
today.
minis. Well, I thought I would because A, I'm terrible, and B, one of my favourite things about going to these places is seeing like what the presence of miniatures and RPGs are at these things, because obviously, I love board games, but I'm definitely more of an RPG and tabletop wargame fan. And so I'm actually using some of the paints that I got. So I went and played around with the paint sets from Two Thin Coats, which, if you're sat there going, I know that joke, it's the person who used to be a Games Workshop guy called Duncan Rhodes, who was famous for saying, you just want to do 2 thin coats with these. And he basically went off and made his own paint set. I've actually been playing around with them. They are really, really nice. I sat down and painted at the actual stand itself at AireCon. Got talking to a lovely woman who paints models for RPG campaigns and stuff like that. Talked with her for 10 minutes. It was lovely. And we both agreed, and this is important, that Two Thin Coats White Star is probably the best white acrylic paint I've ever used. And that's really important because if you play around with miniatures and you want to do stuff, you will know that the two colours that are the biggest pain in the butt to put onto a model are yellows and whites, because pigments are really difficult with those things. But we did, as we've done each year so far, we also went to the RPG area, which was the Queen's Suite at AireCon. And this year we'd signed up for Tales from the Loop, which is a game from Free League. They are the folks what brought you Dragonbane, which I've been reading, and it looks really, really good. Can't wait to get that to the table. They've done other games as well, and I think they also distribute Morkborg, which is quite a famous RPG as well. They've also done things like the Alien RPG, and they've also done the One Ring and Lords of the Ring for 5e as well. But all of that stuff is great. We were there to play Tales from the Loop, which is Kids on Bikes, the 1980s that never was in Sweden, unless you move it to another location, which is what we did with the adventure that we played called The Ghost, which was run by Millie Lavelle, or Millie the GM, who I believe is also a UK Games Expo organizer or something along those lines as well. We got talking with them. So they were running a tale of their own, which is, The Ghost, using Tales from the Loop. And my word, what an incredible system. So it was just kind of amazing. It reminded me a lot of, so obviously the whole thing itself was wonderful. I think Millie was one of the best GMs I've ever had the pleasure of being part of a table
Very
with.
much so.
Her, like Sam and I were talking about, like her ability to like coax out bits of narrative that we hadn't quite made connections to. So there were 5 of us sat at the table, the 4 of us, and one other person who joined us as well, plus Millie, who was doing the GMing. And her ability to bring out these little connections between, I've seen that your character's talking about this stuff and your character's talking about this other thing. Is that maybe a connection between you two characters that we want to explore just briefly? And the answer was always, yeah, because that's an amazing idea, Millie. Like that is genuinely an incredible connection that you've just made there.
And also these kinds of 80s references that she would just sprinkle throughout, so we never lost sight of the setting.
Yeah, and that was so important, because I think a game like that could very easily lose its USP, really, which really is a lot of it, I think, is its theme. Which, as I say, 1980s that never was. It's an alternative universe in which essentially anti-grav tech takes off, and basically the idea is like, what would have happened if that had taken off? And the answer is, essentially, they didn't build as many roads, and so things feel very pastoral, a lot more green than you're used to. But also, it's also a 1980s in which other things do exist. So the pop music that you think of, the different brands and things like that, those are all sort of present as well if you want to have them there. And the other part of the theming is being a kid on a bike, that feeling of freedom that you get where you're allowed to travel further away from your own home, going on an adventure, but also kind of knowing that you're safe. Tales from the Loop is definitely a game in which you don't really explore death of characters all that much, certainly player characters all that much. And while the system mechanically is able to deliver a lot of that stuff, for example, it's very close to things like Blades in the Dark in that you make connections between different characters. You're looking for certain successes, so you're rolling a set amount of dice per the amount of skill that you have, and then you're looking for sixes. Sixes are successes. We roll really badly, really badly.
Really badly.
Oh, so bad though. So I think mechanically the game wanted us to succeed more than we actually did, but mechanically it does a good amount, and it does feel like your friends sort of thrown together, like often kids are, because they're friends through circumstance rather than choice. But I think the actual theme itself, the art that's in Tales from the Loop, which of course is by
Simon Stalenhag.
Yes, the artist behind it is creating these really incredibly evocative images that are both whimsical and slightly liminal and slightly creepy, but also just gorgeously textured and deep. And that whole thing comes together and shines, especially when in the hands of an incredible GM and a good table that's sort of good-natured and riffing off of one another, into a game that I think has the potential to tell some really interesting stories, such as The Ghost, which is the adventure that we were in.
You know, just bringing up Simon as the author of Tales of the Loop, just briefly, because I spoke about how much I like his work and love his work when we did the top 10s of 2024, which is a podcast we released back in January. That RPG and that system just shows how evocative and how amazing his work is. Like, the thickness of that book is all based off of graphic novel, which is probably a third of that thickness.
Yeah.
Like, that is how evocative his writing and his artwork is. Like, it just sparks imagination.
Agreed.
And the thing that struck me when I read Tales from the Loop is how it plays with nostalgia and plays with how you remember things as children. And there's kind of like this, is this actually weird stuff that is happening, or is it just the runaway minds of children?
Yeah.
And I think the wonderful thing about the way that Millie ran our session was that it never really strayed far away from that as a central concept, that everything that we experienced and we did could just be described as, yeah, but this is just kids just making some stuff up and getting a little bit carried away and getting a little bit way above themselves. There was never any overt, oh, you've uncovered the great big mystery of the ghost, and really they are fused crystals shining thanks to radioactive nano grapes. And it's just like, no, we are all 11, 10, 15-year-old kids. Like, we're just having adventures and experiencing things.
Yeah.
Understanding and rationalizing is not what we do. We are just reacting and being present in moments and just seeing where the adventure takes us. And I found that really, really freeing as a player.
I think it may seem kind of on the surface of it a fairly incidental thing, but I think the age of those characters is so important, both
Massive
from a mechanical perspective, because actually the age of the characters does have a effect on the characters that you're playing. So the limit for each character's age is 15, with the viewpoint of once they've gone older than that, they're leaving this kind of world of the childhood behind. But what I kind of really enjoyed about that, and me and Pete talked a little bit about this kind of afterwards, about what we look for and what we enjoy in RPGs. And I think with RPGs that you can often enjoy kind of the really in-depth stories, stuff like that. But the ones I always gravitate towards, and kind of the experience I gravitate towards anyway, of ones either that I've been involved in, or kind of playthroughs through podcast or on YouTube or anything like that, it always comes back to the humor of it and not taking itself too seriously. And I think about all the ones that I've loved, a lot of it is people having fun and laughing all the time. They're not taking it too seriously. And I think with this one, because you've got the element of you're all children, I think part of the whole idea with Tales of the Loop is the ending is never this big climactic, huge battle against the massive demon enemy. Like, at the end of ours, it was our parents showed up and we had to decide what did we tell them. Like, it's a really mundane but quite fun story of, like, it really brings you back and says, actually, no, I'm an 11-year-old child pretending to be older to be with the cool kids. And that is inherently a silly prospect, especially when you're a nearly 40-year-old man doing it.
Yeah, sure.
You can't get away from that, and that's what I like about this, is the fact that by its very nature prevents you from taking it too seriously, and you can just enjoy the fun of it.
Yeah, and I think that a huge part of it as well is that it's very easy within role-playing games to only play games in which you are an incredibly powerful, very capable character that is able to do absolutely anything they want, right? So, yeah, and this is not to knock 5e, because it does a good job of what it is that it's trying to be. But in 5e, or to some extent games like Pathfinder, you're playing a character that is so, it's an epic story of how they came to, everyone is truly a legend amongst mortal men. But actually, it takes quite a lot of restraint and some very high quality storytelling, I would say, to be able to tell a story in which actually that's not the case. Actually, things are bigger than you, right? There are, metaphorically and literally, right? You are playing as kids in a world in which not everything can be explained, either because you are children and that is the nature of them, or because there is this strange technology. If you've ever watched a TV show called Stranger Things, which I've just started watching, there are things that are grounded in a reality, but are kind of magical, kind of spiritual, kind of monstrous, definitely fantastical. And I think that that's also where Tales from the Loop also kind of draws its inspiration. And as Dan says, like at the end of it, you're kind of left, you don't get the conclusion. You don't get you're the big hero. You get and that's the story. And I guess we're going to leave this with you. And like I say, I think that's quite a bold storytelling, and I think that's much harder than being the chosen one in a fantasy land.
Some of the few things. Thank you very much to the people at No Drinks on the Table for showing us Divide and Conquer. When I sort of heard the sell of it from the press event, and it was kind of like, it's a game about fighting with conkers, and I was like, I am sold. Like, that is such a fantastic sort of concept that I'd never really thought about, that very nostalgic feeling of being a child and putting your conkers in vinegar to try and harden them up before the big fight. And it had all that, had a really nice sort of interesting sort of drafting and construction mechanic to what you do, to how you prepare your conkers and how you find them, which is really evocative of that feeling of, kicking like horse chestnuts along the ground to try and find quote unquote the best ones before then. Like,
are conkers a thing that happens globally, or is this just a British thing?
No.
Depends if you have that type of tree in every country.
Stayinginpod@gmail.com. If you're not a part of Blighty, I would really like to know if you play conkers in your country.
Good.
Oh, I smell another Peter Willington Investigate.
Yes.
It's been a while. It's been a while.
And then we stopped by Terratoad, who had one game called Imposter Pigeon and another game called G.R.I.M Inc., which was this game where you're all like basically death, and you have like scenarios of people and implements and locations, and you've got like basically an elevator pitch to pitch your death, or how that person would meet their untimely demise. And I think that was just, a really interesting,
really lovely art style.
Really lovely art style and really interesting approach to that kind of edgy party game that didn't feel exploitative like a Cards Against Humanity does. So
yeah, it felt fun. It felt like the entertainment of it was in the creativity rather in the shock value of the card.
Yes.
Yeah, it
100%.
reminded me of because I think with Cards Against Humanity, you play it once and then you realise what it's doing, and then it stops becoming so much fun.
It was my favourite game the first time I played it, and then it increasingly became my least favourite game.
But I really liked Super Fight, which was a similar game, similar style game, but the idea behind that was you would have a group of cards that would create something good, bad, ugly, whatever. But the game was you creating a story behind that. So it's very much doing a similar type thing with G.R.I.M Inc. Obviously, it is in a different genre. But that whole thing of the game comes from the person as opposed to the cards. Cards Against Humanity, the game is the cards, and that is it.
Yeah.
Whereas with Superfight and with Grim Inc., it appears that the game is inspired by the cards as opposed to just being the only thing.
Yep.
But should we talk some more then about some of the stuff that we played off the show floor then? I think it's probably time for us to talk about Daybreak.
Oh my gosh.
This was the game that I wanted to bring to the show and get all four of you to play, because I've been playing Daybreak for a while now and shown it to my board game group, and then Chris has played it. Some other friends of mine have played it. I've basically shown it to everyone that will sit down and put up with me for an hour, which is a big ask, yeah. So, but I think Daybreak is an astounding piece of work for many reasons. Not only is it a good game, but also I think it handles its message in a really interesting way. And I think that even if you don't think it's a good game, I believe that just how it tackles its theme and how it presents what it is that you are doing is so interesting and so compelling that I think it's just an astounding piece of work.
Yeah.
So Daybreak comes from us from CMYK, who are probably fastly becoming one of my favorite board game publishers of all time. I mean, they already were, because they're responsible for amazing stuff like Monica's Wilmot's Warehouse, Lacuna, and now Daybreak, Spots.
These are all certified bangers.
These are all certified bangers, and I think the one thing that CMYK do is just their focus on how things look and feel and are presented, and how they sort of grace the table is just above and beyond any other board game publisher I think that's out there at the moment. But Daybreak is a game from Matt Leacock and Matteo Manapace, one of those names you might recognize as one of the co-creators of Pandemic Legacy and the creator of Pandemic. And he is back with the Kennerspiel winner, Daybreak. Kennerspiel is one of the awards from the Spiel des Jahres award ceremony, which is basically the connoisseur's game of the year, the gamer's game.
If you follow board game news, if you have an opinion on whether or not Catan is any good, if you say phrases like Cards Against Humanity was my favourite game and then quickly became my least favourite game, it's the game that you're probably most interested in hearing about if it won the Game of the Year award.
Yeah, it's like the Critics' Choice Award.
Yeah, something like that. So Daybreak won that last year. So obviously with that kind of pedigree behind it, publisher, designers, award winning, I'm interested. I'm here. Mm-hmm. However, it's a game about climate change. And I don't know, as themes go, there are just certain things that when you are giving up your precious evenings to do something with friends, the reasons why I'm doing that is to forget about certain things. Let's just put it that way.
Yeah, because we're there to have a nice time. Like, let's not muck around. The four of us are sat here. We recycle. We care about green energy. We don't want the planet to burn. But also, if we're going to sit down and play games with each other, we don't want to feel sad.
That's why we all pretended to be children in an alternative 1980s.
Right. So I can
Conkers.
Exactly. I can understand why one might be, and indeed I was apprehensive about playing this as well, because I was like,
and you made that very clear.
Yes, and because I want to have a fun time. I want the primary goal of the game that I play to deliver me fun. And if I learn something at the same time, lovely, but I'm not there to learn or be taught a valuable lesson. I'm there, and as a secondary, have a bit of fun. I'm there to have fun, right? And so this could have been a game that was very worthy, that was very, all right, very Laurel Wreath kind of a game.
Oh yeah, absolutely. But I'm yet to sort of put my finger on how it actually pulls it off, because it at no point does it really shy away from
it doesn't trivialize it.
No, not at all.
What are the effects of climate change and how difficult that task is. But to give you a brief overview of how the game works, and I won't go into too much detail because I think there is a lot more to say about how this game feels and how this game sort of comes together as a whole experience. But every player plays as a different world power, so Europe, the USA, China, or majority world, and each player has a different level of task in terms of basically tackling their carbon emissions and how they produce electricity, because those carbon emissions essentially get turned into cubes which go onto the board. And if you're familiar with Matt Leacock's work, he's a big fan of them cubes, and cubes means bad things are going to happen, because just like in Pandemic, adding cubes to the board means that you're going to have knock-on effects and bad things are going to basically cascade from there. In Pandemic, it is the spread of a virus. In Daybreak, it is adding carbon into the atmosphere and essentially increasing the temperature of the world. And the higher the temperature of the world gets, the more effects that has on the climate. So permafrost melting, desertification, which doesn't sound as tasty as it should do, unexplained weather events, and also the increasing levels of crisis that you have to deal with, whether that's, lobbying from fossil fuels groups, or displacements of population, and other wonderfully cheerful, happy things that you have to contend with as a group of people. And how you do that, so how you reduce your carbon, is by engine building, essentially. You've got cards in front of you, which are local projects, and you are running those projects in your country or in your continents and areas in order to promote the building of wetlands, to promote different types of alternative energy, to promote social cohesion and better infrastructure and lots of real positive change and action, in order to do something which is called drawdown, which is essentially where you are producing carbon, but that carbon can be safely sequestered by natural or infrastructure means, so like carbon draw, or it is harvested by forests and oceans, as should happen naturally. And all in all, that creates this feeling around the table of groups of people really pulling together in order to fight an ever-present and an ever-growing need. And I've played tons and tons of cooperative games, and I think Daybreak is one of a very rare bunch of them where I really feel like it's a cooperative venture, that we are all walking together, that there is no quarterbacking, there's no one really telling anyone else what to do or how to play. Like, it really feels like we are really facing this thing all head on.
And this is a really interesting point, because I was watching a review of this game from a YouTuber a few months ago, and they really took issue with this game and the fact that it had been labelled a cooperative game, because in their mindset there wasn't much communication or sense of cooperation between players. And you're absolutely right, Sam. For me, this feels cooperative, and also it didn't trivialise the experience of what actually this is all about, because we're each playing as a kind of a section of the planet, whether that be a respective nation or a continent or a kind of a collection of nations. And it just highlights how difficult it is for all of those people to communicate with each other. There are a few cards that allow that, but that just goes to show really how fickle that can be. And sometimes, like, I was feeling quite guilty as a nation that every time it would come around to me at the end of the round, okay, Chris, how much carbon have you got? 25? I'm sorry, I've not been able to shift any carbon this round. So I'd find myself thinking, well, okay, I need to put more wind farms in. I need to put more trees on the planet, because I cannot for some reason shift my carbon. But at the very least, I can try and help all of us as a whole by offsetting that there. And so it felt cooperative for me, even if I wasn't necessarily communicating with all of you. And it meant that when those opportunities came up for me to help somebody, it was great. It was absolutely fantastic. Can I just turn now to our resident permafrost?
Is he melting, or is he holding steadfast and firm?
Dan, you were in your element here. I could tell.
I was a bit unsure of it to begin with. not playing as many games as you guys, when Sam, you were explaining it, and there seemed to be a lot of things I had to keep in my head, I was really starting to think, I can't do this. And as the game started, I was kind of just finding my way. I was playing as the US, as the United States of America. But I did quickly kind of get over that element of it being too much. I slowly been able to grow into it. And I think, Sam, you touched on the kind of the engine building. This is something I've never experienced in a game before. And I think it was one of my absolute favourite parts of it, because that just kind of chimes into like things that like through my work and stuff. If I can automate something, amazing. If I can make it do its, if I can make my work do its own kind of work, that's beautiful. So I could set up some cards, and the whole idea of the game is you have a selection of kind of dirty carbons. That's obviously your fossil fuels, and your green carbons. That's all your wind, your solar power, and everything like that. And the idea is that you want to get rid of all the dirty carbon. So I was able to get some cards that enabled me each round, without even trying, it was getting rid of the dirty carbon and replacing it with green without me having to actually do anything. So I was just loving that. And then kind of what I actually found, and we talk about this kind of cooperatively, and without going to get, I don't want to get political here, and it might be because of the countries that we were. It may have been the positioning on the table, but I was sat next to Pete, who was playing as Europe, and I was the US, and we seemed to have quite a nice time together, and we seemed to be getting on quite well, and we were kind of wink and nudge, and we're like, oh look, I'm getting rid of all my carbon, how about you? Oh yeah, I'm getting rid of all my carbon, while like Chris is China across the way, he's really struggling, but we're all quite happy. And it did kind of make me think a little bit in that sense of like the way the structure for each of the individual players is made. It does create that element of you're not all working under the same rule set. Like what was easy for me to do, Chris, you couldn't do.
No,
in the same
difficult.
way that the US trying to change their industrial nature compared to China would be very, very different. And even more telling was kind of, Sam, you were playing as like majority world. Like there was an element of like you getting left behind as well, because as you tried to do it. And again, you think about that, it's China, US, and Europe leaving the rest. Like that is politics. That is kind of, you can absolutely see that in the world. And I thought, and I didn't really think about that until after the fact. And I thought about it in the days since, which says a lot about the game, that I'm sitting there thinking about this game days later. I really found that once I got to grips with all of the rules, and there are a lot of rules, there's no way around that, but they, as you start to play, they do kind of flow into you, and it becomes a lot easier to get a grasp of. We started to get quite quickly towards the end of the game, and my thought then was, oh no, I'm just getting the hang of this now, or I was enjoying the engine building so much that, oh, I want to keep doing this, and I'm going to run out of time. But then again, those last few rounds, for whatever reason, seemed to take a lot longer. And so again, the game seemed to be perfectly paced, and I don't quite know how it manages to do that. But it kind of speeds up, and then you get towards the end, but actually when like the heavy lifting has to be done of, okay, I've got rid of all my factories, I've got rid of all my dirty, but I've still got this happening or this happening, and the social unrest, and I've got to I now have to try and help China or majority world, because otherwise we're going to lose the game. So it is cooperative in that sense. I was just so impressed at how it managed to pace that without seemingly anything changing. It wasn't like it introduced a new mechanic which slowed the game down, because it didn't.
Yeah. This is where theme and message, because the game has a message, right? Like,
yeah,
theme and message is so intrinsically interlinked, and it's it's interlinked in the mechanics itself. So to begin with, when you start playing, you're like, this is easy. Like we're gonna absolutely smash this. Like I don't know where the challenge is in this game. And by the end turn, you're like, guys, we might not make it, right? And like mechanically, that is a really compelling way of explaining a very difficult discussion point.
And I think the other way that it really plays with that pacing and the sort of the tone of the game, as you're saying, Dan, how it really feels like everyone is doing a sort of a different thing and starting at different states, and it all starts off quite sort of, we're going into this and it's all going to be lovely and rosy, and then suddenly the crashing reality really starts to hit home. is that I think what this game does in its cooperative nature is something that I've not really experienced before. As whereas most games are cooperative mechanically, this is cooperative purely socially.
Yeah.
Usually when you play a cooperative board game, it is, well, if I do this, you do that, and then you do that, and then I'm going to do this, and then that is how we are going to win, and you mechanically cooperate in order to get to a win state. However, you're perfectly right, Dan, in terms of, you know, the game sort of starts off in the 1990s, this naive optimism about, you know, oh yeah, we'll just plop a few wind turbines there, and, you know, we'll start eating less meat and everything's going to be all right, don't worry about it, of like Europe and the USA. Meanwhile, you know, China and majority world are kind of, you know, absolutely becoming, sort of being left behind in that rush. So what happens is, even though there isn't much mechanically that you're doing to really support and guide each other, you become so much socially entwined with the success of other players and the ability of what other players are able to do, that it really pushes you through those desperate and dire sort of end parts of the game when you're really fighting the crises of and the horrific effects of climate change. What you end up doing as a group is being like, right, come on Chris, you know, you've gone from doing 24 carbon to now doing how have you done that? That's incredible. Like I've played this game so many times where we've just been like celebrating someone's achievements because they've managed to like convert all of their dirty energy into clean. They've managed to strip away all their factories. Like they've done incredible jobs, and mechanically they've done that pretty much on their own. Like they may have asked for some help in terms of how they might structure a turn or what cards they might play and as and when, but really everyone is doing everything on their own. But we're all socially entwined with everyone else's victories and successes, because it's only by doing that we're able to reach the state of drawdown. And that feels so richly thematic in terms of how we're all cooperating and having this experience together.
There's absolutely no way, again, thematically and mechanically, there's no way you can win this game without everybody working together. And again, it's part of the message, right? Like we're all on one planet. It doesn't matter if Europe and America are doing it. If the other parts of the world aren't doing it either, it doesn't matter, right? I think the criticism of it's not a cooperative game, I think is a little bit a slightly shallow criticism, because I think it is a deeply thematic, deeply cooperative game, and I think that it's so intrinsic, that cooperative nature, simply because of the story that it's trying to tell.
Can I talk about another happy place for me?
No.
Okay. Well, that was staying in. Great. I've missed this banter. So it wasn't the runs that Sam and I did on the Saturday and the Sunday morning. Thank you to Rob for Hachette for recommending a route to us. It wasn't the runs. Or the running, I should say.
Yeah.
You need to be quite clear.
Both ways are ways of losing quite a lot of weight quickly, aren't they?
Yeah, they are indeed. It was a simple act of fishing. Now, Pete, you weren't available for this because you went off to go and paint some miniatures.
I did.
But I brought a game to the convention, not as big, not as weighty or as lofty, or as perhaps important as Daybreak in terms of the themes that it's engaging with. This is about fishing. And I came across this game a few months ago, and my wife very kindly tracked down a copy of it for me from, I think, a person in Belgium on the BGG marketplace selling this game. And I was also inspired by the fact because Sam had recently helped himself to a copy of Power Grid, which we didn't get a chance to play, but we will be playing soon, by Freedom and Freeze. This is a trick-taking hand management game. And I'd kind of adopted a one-in, one-out policy. I'd just sold my copy of Scout that morning, and I brought fishing with me to play with Sam and Dan, where it's a trick-taking game. So you've got a suit of cards to start off with. Players are handed out cards, and you've kind of got like, okay, I've got a 2 of seahorse, and the seahorse is the suit, or a 3 of crabs, or a 5 of squid, or a 6 of seagulls, and you play a typical trick-taking game. So whoever leads the trick, so whoever starts, they play a card, and the suit of that card, say it's a squid, is the suit. So if anyone has got a card matching that suit, they have to play that. If that number ends up being the highest number overall and that round is finished of that matching suit, they have won the trick, and they take those cards into their pile. And that's basically the equivalent of the fisherman with their net scooping up all this fish. What have I got? Okay, there's a crab here. Oh, no fish. There's a crab here. There's a seagull. There's a squid or an octopus. And each card is a point at the end of the round. And the end of the round occurs when everyone has used up all their cards in their hand. Sounds pretty standard as a trick-taking game. But then something else interesting happens. So when you move on to the next round, those cards that you've been counted and scored that were in your boat now go into your stock room, and they're your deck for the next round. So you start drawing. So there's a certain number of cards we all draw from. Oh, I won a lot during that last round, so I've still got some cards left over. Okay, well, I'm going to be playing with the cards that I just won. Oh, what's happened to Sam? Sam didn't win as many points in that last round. They've only been able to draw up 3 cards. Oh, they then turn to this other deck, which is in the centre of the space, which kind of represents going deeper into the ocean. So now Sam and Dan have access to cards that have more power, maybe a higher number in the suit. Or they've got the trump suit, which hasn't been revealed yet, which is fish. Anyone who plays a fish, they will win that trick, providing someone else doesn't play a fish of a higher number. So then what happens over 8 rounds, there's this delicate balance between wanting to win tricks so I can get points, but also not winning so much that I'm just filling up my deck with lots of relatively low scoring cards, particularly if, say, other players are unlocking cards which are like a 0, which I play that card. I may not have won the trick, but that gives me a little power, which means I can take one of the cards there before the other person claims all of the rest of them. So this delicate balance between not wanting to win tricks and deliberately trying to lose tricks, and then other players thinking, actually, I don't want to win either. I'm going to make sure that person wins so I can clog up their deck with points because I think I'm okay for this round, and I could do with some of those higher cards that are deeper in the deck. And that's it in a nutshell, in a tiny little box. And for a genre which I would say is overly saturated within board gaming, it was quite refreshing to see trick-taking in this particular manner.
I did really enjoy this game. However, I don't think, to be kind to myself, I'll say I'm not as experienced enough with trick-taking games. To be honest, I don't think I was smart enough in this. The fact that as I was playing it, and as you're talking about it, I'm thinking about us playing it. I was like, why did I play it? What did I do? Because I lost quite a bit. Even if I had big cards, that was the thing. I'd have big cards, like high numbers, but I kept losing. And thinking about it now, looking back, I was like, I couldn't get past the fact that I would hold in my hand like these great cards, and I'd be like, I've got this. But I'm not thinking like someone who plays trick-taking games, and I'm not thinking about the wider game that's happening. I'm just thinking about the fact of the highest number is 10. I've got 7, 8, 9, and 10 in the same suit. If I do this right, if I do a 7, then no one's going to beat that. If I do an 8, no one's going to beat that. Forgetting the fact that there's going to be turns where I have to play a card. And if I don't have the card that I need to, I have to then burn one of these that I've been strategizing.
Yeah.
And for whatever reason, that just didn't lodge in my head at all. And I kept doing this same thing of just being excited about having the bigger cards and strategizing from that sense, rather than thinking about it's kind of the interior game and the exterior game. I was really focused in on what I can do. I forgot about, like you mentioned there that like you'd be playing and you're thinking about, okay, well, I want to clog up someone else's deck with small cards. To this moment, that had never occurred to me. Literally sitting here now, that had never even occurred to me, having even thought about it, that I could infect your cards with all the low stuff. Even though when we're playing it, like Sam would throw down a 2 and go, take my trash, which you did a lot.
Yeah, and I ended up with like a hand of seagulls. That's all I had.
I am so much fun over the course of a weekend.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
dexterity games would be more in my kind of wheelhouse because there's less to do in my brain.
I don't know. You were very good at things in rings.
Yeah, very good.
Oh,
things
what
in
a game.
rings.
I nearly gave you this game afterwards. I'd literally just bought it. And because I'd seen it.
Here you are at this.
I saw someone review it like a few months ago, and I blindly assumed it was just going to be a party game, and I put it on the table because you've got this nice big kind of like, what to describe it really, it's just these strings, these coloured strings that are all these circle, the interlink, and you basically create a Venn diagram. One side is categorized as a word, which is the yellow, the other is an attribute, and then you've got a big pile of things, really, objects. And then, Dan, you secretly chose a rule for the word and a rule for the attribute.
Yeah, so you have a selection of cards which are split. I mean, altogether, there are actually 3 strings altogether. We didn't play with the third one because that's kind of hard mode, and I'm very glad we didn't. So you have word and you have attribute, and the third one is context. So you then have a set of cards for one set of cards for word, one set of cards for attribute, one set of cards for context, and within that, that's split into easy, medium, and hard. So you can pick and choose exactly how you want to do this. I mean, you could play it with just the one ring if you wanted to, and you can play on easy. And so you can really scale it up and down depending on how you want to play. And so, yeah, I was what's referred to as the knower. So my role was to kind of draw, depending on where we played it at medium. So I had to draw one word rule and one attribute rule, which generally meant, I think the one I had was the word has to end in either a consonant or a Y. And the attribute was you can see through it. So then everyone is then dished out some cards. I think everyone gets 5 cards. And everyone takes it in turns to place a card within the Venn diagram of either the word rule, the attribute rule, or that center point where both of those things are true. So I put down a couple of cards as examples, so I know the rule, no one else does, and that's the kind of the clues that you have as to what they are. And then everyone puts a card down, and when they put a card down, I look at it, I see where they've placed it, and then they either say correct or incorrect. If it's correct, that's brilliant, they can have another go. If it's incorrect, I have to move the card to the correct location, so that will be either within the rings, or if none of the things are true, I place it outside of the rings. But that, in doing so, that gives the players information. It tells them something. They don't really know what it tells them, but it does tell them something. If they've got it incorrect, they take another card, so they bring their hand back up to 5, and it moves on to the next person. So obviously, if you've got it correct, you're down to 4. As soon as somebody gets down to 0, then the game is over and they win. I'm sure if you wanted to, you could continue to play this so until other people get it, because other people might not have figured out what the rule is. But when we played it, quite quickly it became a cooperative experience of people talking about what they think the clues were. And the more cards get played, the more evidence you have as to what the clues are, but also they're not always straightforward. What was really lovely for me, because it was a very different experience for me, starting it off as the knower, was I think we've all played Codenames. And we've all been the person playing Codenames. I mean, Pete, you were telling us how much you played Codenames on the digital edition. But when you're playing Codenames and you're the kind of the clue giver, you'll say the clue and you can't give any information, but you then listen to what other people are talking about. And you can hear, are they going in the right direction? Are they going in the wrong direction? What are they thinking? What are they seeing that perhaps I didn't see? And it is different, but there was a similar element to this where I'm putting cards down and people had gone down a rabbit hole and were convinced of a certain rule that was just wrong.
Yeah.
It just so happens that a lot of the cards that had been put down did meet that rule. And then eventually another card would get put down that cancelled that, and then they would be back to square one. And for me, that was really quite an enjoyable experience just to watch it. And it became kind of almost theatre. That, as you kind of mentioned, Chris, like someone would put a card down and there was 7 of us playing, like everyone would turn to me. What's Dan going to say? What's Dan going to say? Oh, it's wrong. Where's it going to go? Oh, next one. And it was really a fun experience, I think. I mean, Sam, you were the only other person who was a knower as well. Did you have that same experience as I did?
Yeah, it was great. Loved it. The power, the theatre, the drama. Love things in rings. The expectation of what it was going to be and then the reality of what it was one of the most crushing realizations of the weekend, when Chris was like, we're going to play this word party game, and like you're playing with these really vibrant rings and lots of like these splashes of color.
Should
and
we play
the
it
artwork
difficult?
on it.
No, we'll just start with standard and work our way up.
And the artwork on it is quite not childish, but it's kind of appealing, seemingly appealing to a younger audience. And then within 10 minutes, we're all there sitting in silence, heads in hands, going, "What is going on? What is this?
Yeah.
What are these words?"
Because I think the default game is meant to be competitive, but like, oh my, I don't think I'd have as much a fun time at all if I was having to deal with that on my own.
No, I think when we were bludgeoned our way through into playing it cooperatively, and I think that when we did that, the game itself became, I think, really we got the most out of it as a group experience and as a group deductive experience, where it's kind of all against one rather than one against all in terms of, right, we're going to take down Dan. I don't know what this puzzle is, but we're going to take him down, and one of us is going to solve it, and one of us is going to do it. And I feel like there is as the knower, like that is how I sort of approached it. It's kind of like it was me against everyone, and I'm going to use all of my theatrical tricks to kind of not throw you off the scent or not deceive you in any way, because I can't do that. I've got to, follow the rules and obey what the rules for the words and rules for the attributes are. But there are, I can sort of play with, keeping you on the hook. Is it going to be right? Is it going to be wrong? Is it going to be? Oh,
yeah, it's
love
right.
That
sort of thing.
All right,
you
we're on.
Love prolonging.
Love
that
kind of thing.
You literally became Caesar, giving the thumbs up and thumbs down.
Yeah.
And when I say literally, I mean you literally gave us the thumbs up or thumbs down.
Yeah. Not a metaphorical sense, a genuine, evil smile,
genuine Caesar complex. Yeah.
And I think there was something really lovely where one of the people we were playing with, we turned to each other and he'd be like, "Okay, I'm playing this card here. I feel that this is the right place, but I don't know why.
Yeah.
But I feel, but I know now I'm developing understanding of a pattern here, but I don't know what the pattern is. And I was correct. I don't know why I was correct.
The amount of times I heard I saw me move a card and someone said, "I don't know why, but I knew he was going to do that. I don't know why." But that kept being said. And then there'd be another time where in the one side there was an ice cube or something like that, and we weren't getting much. And like one guy who's like 3 turns away says, "I think it's something to do with temperature. I've got a card I can test that with, so don't worry about that. I'll test it when it comes around to me. I've got this theory." And that's proper cooperative. That's okay. Well, we think there's something over there, but he's going to do that. I'm going to do this, and it was just really, really clever.
Peter,
hello.
What was your miracle of AireCon?
Well, I mean, for me,
other than getting there fine on time.
Well, yeah, there is that. I mean, obviously the food was amazing. The company was delightful. All of that good stuff.
That's some lovely breakfasts.
Some lovely breakfast. I think for me, I managed to come away from the bring and buy with a game that I've wanted to play for a very long time. Called
Really? I don't think it's a game that you wanted for a long time until you realised it was there and it was for sale.
I've wanted to play the Games Workshop back catalogue for a very long time, and Railway Rivals is certainly one of those.
But until you saw it, come on, until you
but I
saw
think
it,
that's,
I don't
that's
think you'd
part of the
realised
miracle,
how
right?
much...
It's
a miracle.
I think it's that thing of like, oh yeah, I forgot they put this out, and I never thought I would see a copy of this in real life, and it's here, and it's 15 quid. Like I was like, all right, I'll give this one a punt. I think for me that was like, a big one. I would say I'm always charmed by the bring and buy sale, simply because it's always that thing of the stuff that you don't know. Like, you can buy the latest sets of Lorcana anywhere in the world, right?
Yeah,
but like,
absolutely.
and at every convention, there's gonna be somebody who'll sell you a copy of Carcassonne. But yeah, like finding those weird rare things along those lines, I think that's absolutely wonderful. But I think for me, it was just wonderful to have you wonderful folks there, having a great time. We were all hanging out. It was really lovely. Yeah, it's always a miracle. It's always the AireCon miracle is that it continues to exist and that it continues to keep to the spirit of what AireCon is.
I've just sent you all a video of my miracle of AireCon.
Is this the one?
Picture this.
Is this the one that is currently playing on our?
Yeah, but this
Instagram
is
thing?
the full
I've seen
version
this.
that I've sent you, which is deep in a game of Strike. Samuel Turner is down to his last dice. He throws it. It jumps out of the arena. It spins. It drops back in, hits a dice and lands perfectly on a number 6, which is a match for the other 6 that's in there. And oh my word, the celebration, the cheering. Oh, what a miracle that moment
Especially
was.
in
That
slow
Chris
motion.
managed to capture that.
Especially
yeah.
in slow motion, Sam.
Yeah, amazing.
I mean, that is a miracle. Yeah, I think my miracle occurred on the last day. It was in the bring and buy. It was discovering a first edition copy of Libertalia, which is a game I've always wanted to own, but has been out of print for ages. Trying to get a copy of that first edition. I'd stopped looking, actually, to be honest. I just thought, okay, I'll end up playing it somewhere, but I'll never own it. And to find that, oh, just beautiful. Absolutely wonderful. So I'm really, really looking forward to playing that. And just the food, the laughter. As I was saying, actually, I tend to be quite really slow in terms of my cognitive abilities when I hang out with you lot. Not just because
It's probably
you're
for the
intelligent
best.
people.
Why bother putting in more energy than you need
No,
to, right?
it's not because you're also such intelligent people. It's not just because of that, but also just because I'm just so relaxed.
Yeah.
And I remember our friend Richard, who we'd never met in person, was saying, "I don't want to leave. This is great. I don't want to leave." And just extraordinary, staying up till the early hours of the morning playing games.
Yeah, Dan and I staying up until at least 10 o'clock.
Hey, I think we made it to 10:30.
Yeah, we made it to 10:30 one night. That I tell you what, that's the AireCon miracle.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We I think it was 10:30, and we were playing like a really big game of Bonanza. And I sitting next to Pete, and I kind of said to him, "It's like, have you been playing a game?" And you just realise the entire game's passing you by. Like, I had no idea what was going on. I was just putting cards down and didn't know what any of them meant. I was just kind of, my brain had be like, you know what? Like, you guys, like Chris, Sam, I think you play more board games, definitely more than me. I think you perhaps play more board games than Pete. Like, my brain is not trained for the amount of board games we played, the mental capacity to play that many board games in that short period of time. So when it got to kind of the end of the Saturday, my brain was just kind of like, no, I'm done. I can't do this anymore.
Happy tired is the way I like to describe
Oh yeah,
it.
don't get me wrong, absolutely happy. It's happy. It's kind of tiredness and exhaustion from kind of having fun that your body can't take anymore.
Drunk with fatigue.
Yes.
Yes.
Dan, your AireCon miracle. It's your first AireCon.
I think just on the face of it, that's the miracle that I managed to make it. Is it the second or third one you've been to this year?
It's my fourth one I've
Fourth.
ever been to.
Well, there you go. So it's my first, your fourth, and yeah, like it's a miracle that I managed to kind of get through so many games and kind of love them all. Like all the bits you've always talked about. Like, I love the bring and buy. I didn't kind of buy anything, but I just loved that whole experience, that feeling of you're selling the games, like checking the app when it comes through. And like Pete, you mentioned there about kind of buying that game that you kind of really wanted to play and love like that. And the idea that someone has just handed it in and you've bought that and you're really excited about playing this, and then at somewhere else in the building, someone's got a little notification saying, "Oh, Railways has sold." Oh, brilliant. And like having a very different experience of, like, for me, like I sold, say, Whitehall. For me, that was great. I wasn't playing it. I could sell it. I could get a bit of money for it. Brilliant. The fact that it's then made someone else really happy because they get to play it now is just a really lovely experience. And that's kind of what I love about that whole bring and buy setup they have there. And obviously, one of the best bits is you go around and you strategically find the games that you have put for sale and you put them into the most prominent positions.
Yeah.
And I spend a lot of my time doing that. And it works for pretty much all my games got sold.
That is the Swizz. That is the absolute mega strats, I would say.
But yeah, I think for me, rather than kind of anything in particular, it was just finally being able to enjoy this thing that you guys are. I remember, like, especially last year, like hearing you guys on here talk about it and actually getting really jealous at that point. I'm like, yeah, I really wish I'd been there for that. And so just to be there to experience it, and like to meet someone like Richard, who I've spoken to for years, but actually never met in person. Like that was a delight.
So we are going to be at UKGE. Well, Chris and I are going to be at UKGE. If you are going on the Saturday, we will be there, zooming through, pressing the flesh. So if you'd like to meet us, if you'd like a sticker, then do come and find us.
And
please,
if you are at Salute on the 11th or 12th of April, I will be there because these three. Dan, do you want to come to Salute? Do you want to come to an ancient medieval warfare miniatures wargaming convention?
And if you're
That's a
in
loaded
KFC in Warwick, you can come and say hi to me.
Yeah. But yeah, do come and say hello to us at those things. And drop us a line if you want to meet up, or if you've got anything else you want to catch up with us on or tell us about, stayinginpod@gmail.com is the email address to contact us on.
you can see the images, the highlights, the things that we did.
The running.
At AireCon. The running that we went on, the meals that we ate.
So many runs.
So many runs. You can see that all on Instagram at Staying In Pod. When other people were sleeping and playing games, I was making reels. One of the reasons I was up till late at night, every night of AireCon. So if you'd like to see some pictures from the show, and if you'd like to see my miracle of AireCon, then look at our reel from AireCon Day 2, where you can see, Strike! Such a good game. Thanks, Germany.
And totally unconnected. Pants optional, as always.